One of the more peculiar developments in the ongoing conflict has been the involvement of North Korean troops on the Russian front lines. The Kremlin had hoped this unexpected partnership would provide a strategic advantage over Ukrainian forces in the KSK Oblast, but the reality has fallen far short of expectations. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky stated that North Korean combat casualties have already reached several thousand. These figures include those killed and wounded. Adding to these numbers, over 4,000 North Korean soldiers were taken prisoner by Kiev's special forces, increasing their casualty rate. So just how many North Koreans have been captured in total? Could this wave of captures signal an end to the military alliance between Moscow and Pyongyang and the KSK? We will uncover the answers to these pivotal questions. But before we continue, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on the notification bell, and give us a like. Your support is extremely important. It's crucial that you stay with us until the end of this video, as we will summarize all the key findings at the conclusion. Before we proceed with a new chapter, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. The capture of several North Korean soldiers alive by Ukrainian troops marks one of the most notable aspects of this conflict so far. Kiev released photos showcasing two wounded North Korean soldiers in hospital beds. These two young soldiers claim that they were completely unaware that they were fighting alongside Russia and only have Russian names on their identification cards. They also said they are unable to comprehend commands due to the language barrier. Furthermore, this situation is not limited to just those two men. As North Koreans begin to join Ukraine's I Want to Live project, it is looking likely that the number of surrendering Pyongyang soldiers will continue to increase. According to Ukrainian security services, including United States intelligence sources, that nearly 1,000 North Korean soldiers have been removed from the fight. This means completely out of action. War experts estimate that of the 4,000 North Koreans on the casualty list, 500 are in such poor condition that they have to surrender to the Ukrainian army. While the Ukrainian security service hasn't released the exact figure to the public, security officials did recently share crucial information regarding the capture of North Korean soldiers. According to the details, 2 North Korean soldiers were captured in the KSK Oblast. A striking video was released relating to this, which showed Ukrainian special forces carrying one of the wounded North Koreans through a snow-covered forest. After the release of the video, Zelensky declared that Ukraine would give journalists the opportunity to talk to them so that the world would understand the real situation. Zelensky expressed appreciation for the paratroopers and the tactical groups responsible for rescuing the North Korean soldiers. The Ukrainian leader also stated that the 2 North Koreans who were captured as prisoners of war were taken to Kiev and were given proper medical treatment for their wounds. The way Ukraine treats North Korean prisoners is both superior and more compassionate. There were several photographs published in the press to prove this. Ukrainian intelligence published pictures of 2 captured North Korean prisoners of war lying on hospital beds. One had bandages on his hands. The other one had a bandage around his chin. According to the Ukrainian security service, one of the prisoners was born in 2005 and has been serving in the army since 2021. Security officials also stated that the prisoner had traveled to Kursk for training, but didn't know that he would be fighting against Ukraine. The other prisoner was born in 1999 and had been working as a sniper reconnaissance officer since 2016. Security officials said the investigation into the captured soldiers is continuing with the help of South Korean interpreters, as none of them spoke either Russian or Ukrainian. The Ukrainian security service said one of the captives had a Russian-style military identification, which was not in his name, but another person from the Tuva Republic, and the other had no documentation at all. The Ukrainian military had previously revealed that North Korean soldiers fighting on Russia's behalf were given fake military documents that had Russian names and birthplaces. Before the 2 soldiers were taken prisoner, Kiev reported that Russia was trying to conceal the foreign presence on the battlefield. In late December, Ukrainian special forces reported that they had eliminated 3 North Korean soldiers in the KSK region and confiscated their documents. These military documents did not have stamps or photographs. While family names were given in Russian, the place of birth was listed as the Republic of Tuva. The special forces said in a statement referring to a region in southern Siberia on the border with Mongolia. However, the signatures on the documents were written in Korean, proving their true origin. This critical situation confirms that Russia is trying their best to hide the losses on the battlefield and cover up the foreign presence there. Neither Moscow nor Pyongyang have officially recognized the presence of North Korean troops in Russia. Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky said something very similar after the revelations. He emphasized that Russia was trying to hide the battlefield casualties and is using extreme tactics to conceal the identities of the North Korean soldiers killed in the war. Zelensky's claims are supported by the fact that one of the North Korean soldiers captured by Ukrainian forces had the identity of someone registered in Tuva, while the other one had no documentation at all. On the other hand, the Kiev administration is using the captured soldiers as leverage. They will try to determine how valuable these soldiers are for Russia in prisoner exchanges. Ukraine has been able to secure the release of Ukrainian civilians and soldiers in some regions in exchange for Russian soldiers. The North Korean prisoners add a new element, as Pyongyang doesn't want the secret deal it has with Moscow to be made public. If the captured North Korean soldiers speak to the media, this could turn into a huge scandal for the Kim Jong-un regime. Moscow might push for the return of North Korean soldiers at the prisoner swap table, but what is going to happen to the North Korean soldiers who were wounded in the KSK, but not captured by Ukrainian forces? This whole process makes Russia's North Korean troop transfer very controversial. The most critical problem for Moscow on the KSK front is that logistical issues on the ground also affect the North Koreans. Lack of food, shelter, and medical facilities is quickly decreasing the morale of these young soldiers. Some reports have claimed that Russian doctors don't pay attention to the wounded and seriously ill North Koreans, and they're in some cases left to die without even being taken to the hospital. Ukrainian intelligence reports show that many North Korean soldiers are filling hospitals in the Korko Oblast. Hundreds of wounded North Korean soldiers are recovering in the medical centers of the oblast and are preparing to return to the front line. There are also reports that some of the soldiers are in critical condition. Russia's military officials have denied these reports, but definite proof of the situation of the North Koreans has been found. The Ukrainian security services intercepted a phone call between a nurse at a hospital in the Moscow region and her husband, who was fighting against Ukraine in the KV region. In the recorded conversation, the Russian woman said that over 200 North Korean soldiers were taken to the Russian hospital near Moscow in just a few days. The Russian woman said that the North Korean wounded were being kept in better conditions than the Russian soldiers. According to the woman, the doctors were not able to speak with the wounded North Koreans because of the language barrier. They were also forbidden to communicate with the soldiers in English. By contrast, those captured by the Ukrainian side, or the ones that surrendered, are treated in line with the Geneva Conventions and get medical attention. This information has become common knowledge among the North Korean troops on the front line. The propaganda that they were exposed to back home about going to help Russia, showing heroism and great rewards, has completely shattered the dreams of many North Korean soldiers as they now face hunger, cold, drone bombardment, and the cruel behavior of the Russian officers. It is not hard to understand the disappointment of many North Koreans who eagerly went to fight for Russia. The young men that were hoping for a hero's journey are literally living in hell, exposed to Ukrainian artillery and drone strikes. These inexperienced soldiers are often pushed into the front lines without creating protected positions. They do not know their positions, cannot speak Russian, and are unable to properly understand commands. The Ukrainians are using this lack of structure to their advantage. Many Pyongyang soldiers were either killed or wounded in the battles that happened around KSK. Some of them are choosing to seek refuge on the Ukrainian side, even when captured, due to fear of execution by Russia. Ukraine has a long-standing surrender line known as I Want to Live, which invites Russian soldiers to safely surrender. Kiev is now opening this same line to North Koreans. The I Want to Live announcement, in Korean, states, "This war isn't yours. You have been deceived by Putin and Kim Jong-un. If you surrender, you'll be treated in accordance with the Geneva Conventions." Testimonies from North Koreans that have already fled the KSK front or have been wounded and sought safety in Ukraine confirm that the humane treatment they have received from Kiev is much better than they would get in Russia. This has started to be shared between the Pyongyang troops on the front lines, which could turn into a wave of mass surrenders. Even the Kim regime's threat to punish the families of soldiers that desert does not stop the horrors of war. The possibility of returning home is also closed due to regime repression. Kim Jong-un's regime has been known to punish the families of soldiers that desert. Therefore, despite the fact that Pyongyang soldiers don't openly express their dissatisfaction within the Russian army, actual events, like defending to Ukraine as prisoners of war, are proof of growing unrest. According to the Ukrainian security services, several North Koreans have been lost during operations in the KSK Oblast in the past few weeks. Others have been captured or wounded during the early days of the conflict. In the beginning, there was a perception that the North Korean snipers and storm corps were performing at a very high level, but it soon became clear that these soldiers, untrained against modern artillery and drones, were unable to survive in the trenches. The language barrier is also making matters worse. Russian officers try to convey orders to the young men who do not speak Russian by using signs or poor translations. Additionally, Russian soldiers do not have much sympathy for the North Koreans, as they see them as foreign fighters that are stealing work from them. This lack of cohesion is increasing coordination gaps at the front. Retired Lieutenant General Chun In-bum, a veteran of the South Korean Army, said that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un would send his elite and highly trained and brainwashed soldiers, known as the Storm Corps. But as you may recall, the Ukrainian forces have wiped out the Special Storm Corps on the KSK front. The 11th Corps has suffered over 1,000 casualties after the latest offensive by Ukrainian forces. Some of the soldiers within the Storm Corps that have suffered these heavy casualties are special forces like the United States Navy SEALs or Rangers, or Britain's SAS. Others are light infantry and snipers. Experts believe that the Storm Corps, the 11th Army Corps of the North Korean Army, was better trained, physically fit, and more motivated than an average North Korean soldier. But this didn't save them from the real battlefield. In particular, UAVs became the worst nightmare for North Korean soldiers. The vast majority of the North Korean troops that were eliminated were targets of accurate drone strikes. Command and communication issues prevented the North Korean soldiers from responding to the impending threat. The North Koreans, who only knew around 100 basic military terms like fire and position, were often only able to witness a few seconds of Ukrainian drones before being targeted. These situations prove just how important training is on the front lines. According to the U.S. State Department, the training North Korean soldiers receive in Russia includes basic infantry operations, like artillery use, drone operation, and trench clearance. These skills are needed for frontline operations, but due to a lack of training time, the North Korean soldiers do not usually benefit from the training they receive. After these heavy casualties, it is still unclear if these poorly trained North Korean soldiers are going to be able to dig trenches, hold positions, or actually fight on the front lines. The Pyongyang regime is even planning to send more inexperienced soldiers to Russia in the future, despite the high casualty rate at KSK. In other words, in addition to the 12,000 soldiers, North Korea could send more personnel to be under Putin's command. Pyongyang's latest plan looks likely to include 100,000 troops, who they are hoping will be able to benefit from Russian technology. South Korea has stated that it is very likely that North Korea will demand advanced technology from Russia. This includes technology relating to tactical nuclear weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles, reconnaissance satellites, and ballistic missile submarines. This agreement seems to be beneficial for both countries. In fact, Pyongyang has given tens of thousands of soldiers to Putin to get access to Russian supplies and technology. In addition to manpower, North Korea has also sent millions of artillery shells and other weapons to Russia. Pyongyang has also given Moscow long-range rocket and artillery systems, according to media sources who cited Ukrainian intelligence. But could the deployment of more North Korean troops to Russia affect the outcome of the war? The war, which has been going on for almost 3 years, has turned into a battle of attrition. The Russian army has lost more than 700,000 soldiers, according to official Ukrainian figures. Additionally, North Korean losses, which have reached 3,000, prove the fate of these soldiers in the conflict. In other words, more North Korean soldiers joining the Russian side won't change the outcome of the war. Moreover, there are also many issues the North Koreans will face. These young, inexperienced soldiers have been dealing with hunger recently. North Korean soldiers have started a mass revolt on the front lines because they are not getting enough food. The Chief Intelligence Directorate of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry has confirmed that North Korean soldiers are facing critical food shortages in KSK. According to the intelligence, there is rising discontent among North Korean military personnel stationed in the KSK region due to these food shortages. North Korean soldiers that are part of the 11th Marine Brigade and the Airborne Brigade are complaining about the lack of food that has been provided to them by the Russian military. Russia is trying to find a solution to this problem. For this reason, Russia sent a general to the front line in the KSK region. Major General Mev Utov, Deputy Commander of Resource Supply of the Leningrad Military District, came to the course fields to solve the hunger problem experienced by North Korean soldiers. The general ordered the delivery of individual rations from the food stocks of the 11th Separate Airborne Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces to members of the North Korean Army. However, it is easy to understand that this was only a temporary solution. It is unknown how long the North Koreans, who cannot even find food, will be able to endure these conditions. If the food stocks run out, North Korean soldiers in KSK are expected to either rebel, desert, or surrender to Ukrainian forces. But hunger is not the only problem. North Koreans are also being tested by the cruel behavior of their Russian commanders. Russian soldiers do not respect them as fellow fighters. Faced with extreme insults, violence, and other inhumane behavior, North Korean soldiers are increasingly losing interest in fighting for Russia. For these reasons, we predict that North Korean soldiers are very likely to surrender during the war, try to escape, and seek asylum. Even though the Kremlin and Pyongyang are trying to hide it, it has become very clear that desertions amongst North Korean soldiers are rising. In mid-October, North Koreans deserted Russian combat camps without ever going into combat. On October 15th, 18 North Korean soldiers deserted and were captured by Russian FSB forces. 2 days later, when Ukraine targeted groups of North Korean soldiers for the first time, a group of 40 North Koreans was destroyed by a HIMARS strike. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry, aware of the number of casualties and desertions, has reintroduced the I Want to Live surrender hotline for North Korean soldiers that are fighting under Putin's command in KSK. Ukraine's I Want to Live project has released a new video in Korean, calling on North Korean soldiers to surrender to Ukrainian forces when they are sent to conflict zones. The video, which shows Ukrainian prisoner of war camps, states that upon surrender, North Korean soldiers will be held in line with the Geneva Conventions, and that the Ukrainian side will guarantee safe detention, food, and medical care. No matter how many troops Pyongyang sends to help Russia, or where the target is, Ukrainian P camps are ready to receive soldiers of all nationalities, religions, and ideologies. The 24-hour hotline that was launched by the Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine in September 2022 was created to help Russian soldiers voluntarily surrender themselves or their units to the Ukrainian army. It is now expected to expand to serve North Korean soldiers willing to surrender. In conclusion, Russia's continued persistence in using North Korean troops on the battlefield is likely to only have negative consequences for Moscow and Pyongyang military cooperation in the long run. The situation will change critically when the conditions of war get worse, and Russia is unable to provide for North Korean troops in the same way it has been unable to provide basic needs for its own soldiers. The number of Pyongyang troops surrendering to Kiev is likely to significantly increase over time, as the North Korean soldiers who fought for Russia in KSK realize that they are treated very well when they go under the protection of Ukrainian forces as prisoners of war. North Korean soldiers who don't surrender will become an easier target for the Ukrainian army, as they are fighting under very difficult conditions. This is going to increase the casualties of North Korean soldiers fighting for Russia,